Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scott Selections here for Friday, October 18th. Before we get into today's play of the day, quick recap of what happened yesterday. We picked up a very easy winner in the Thursday night football game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos, as we ended up giving out the Kansas City Chiefs -3, which was available at -110 at FanDuel. Very interesting game, as the Chiefs looked like they were about to coast after the Broncos failed the two-point conversion and then had one of the worst fake punts I've probably ever seen. But then Mahomes ended up getting injured, and Matt Moore stepped in, and honestly, it didn't even matter. Joe Flacco completely lost in the pocket. He got sacked, I believe it was 8 times before. He was just bad. I mean, if you bet Denver, I understand with the injuries, but betting on Joe Flacco is never an easy proposition, and I'm happy that we got to watch him struggle as he normally does, as we picked up a nice, easy winner on Thursday Night Football. Now, in terms of today's card, you have some college football on, and you have some hockey. And you also have some UFC also, which is very interesting because usually UFC is on Saturday, but UFC card is actually going to be on ESPN2 tonight, so it will not be on ESPN Plus. You can watch the entire card if you want tonight, and I definitely will be looking at some of that. In terms of the fights, I'm not really leaning any which way, but I might give out some thoughts later on. In terms of hockey, I'll give out some leans as I did yesterday. And in terms of the play of the day, we will be talking about the Houston Astros against the New York Yankees. As a Yankees fan, I am not surprised that the Astros have pretty much dominated the series so far. If you remember my postseason picks video, I did say that I had the Astros to win the AL, as I think the Yankees just rely too much on home runs. They've already come out with the lineup today, and I don't think it really matters with Verlander on the mound against Paxton. I think this game could get ugly. But in terms of the play of the day, we will be going back to the well on one of the plays we had earlier in the series, and we will be taking Gary Sanchez under half a hit or Gary Sanchez and no hits, which is available at -115 on DraftKings. Yes, I know Gary Sanchez homered yesterday. His other 3 at-bats were absolutely terrible, and if he struck out twice, and it seems like the only 2 at-bats that he's actually looked really good in so far this series have been against James out of the bullpen. I don't think the Astros will be using him again after he threw. I forgot how many pitches he threw, but he definitely should not be available once again. I think Verlander should go 7 strong. Sanchez in his career, according to ESPN, is 1 for 12 against Verlander. That is actually incorrect because it did not factor in the Game 2 performance where Sanchez went 0 for 4 against Verlander before also getting out in extra innings. So he's actually 1 for 16 minimum against Verlander. You just can't hit him. Sanchez, I know he hit a home run, but as a whole, Sanchez only sits fastball. He's looked useless at the plate. He has 2 hits so far in this series out of, let me actually get a total of this. Hang on a second. 4, 5, 9, 13. He's 2 for 17 in the series, and he is a very solid 3 for 25 in the playoffs, and you're getting him at -115 to not get a hit. Walks are fine. I don't really care. He might get pulled at some point for a pinch runner late in the game if they need to. The Yankees did announce their lineup. Sanchez has been moved up in the order, which makes no sense to me. He's been moved up to 6. And main news, though, is that Giancarlo Stanton will be back in the lineup as he will be taking Encarnacion's place in the DH. So the Yankees lineup will be LeMahieu, Judge, Torres, Stanton, Hicks, Sanchez, Gregorius, Urshela, and Gardner. Do I think it matters? No. I think Verlander is going to coast. I think the Yankees have shown time and time again in the series they simply cannot hit with runners in scoring position, and I think Sanchez will be at the forefront of those issues once again. I think Verlander, all he has to do is not fall behind early in the count, knowing Verlander and his low walk ratios. I think he'll dominate early. I think he'll stick to the off-speed stuff. I think he knows how to pitch to Sanchez, whose numbers are terrible against him, and I think you should see another terrible performance by Sanchez, which should lead to some boos once again. So the play of the day will be on Gary Sanchez under half a hit, which is available at -115 on DraftKings. I think value-wise, I think that line should be at -125, -130, based on what we've seen so far this series. So I will simply take that to the bank, and I will rely on those solid odds. Now, in terms of some of the other leans, I will give out my baseball lean in here. In terms of the game today, lean to the Astros -1.5. I know that as a Yankees fan, I hope I'm wrong, but Verlander versus Paxton looks really ugly, and I definitely think that that game could get pretty ugly moving on. I think you should see the Astros open up an early lead. I think Paxton will struggle as he ended up getting pulled. I believe it was somewhere in the second inning, give or take, in game 2 or the third inning. I don't even remember. He didn't look good. But either or, I think he will struggle, and I think Verlander should be able to coast once again. Plus, the Yankees bullpen, it just hasn't been that good. I hope Ottavino never sees the field ever again for the rest of the series, as he has actually set an MLB record for the most appearances in a postseason by getting no outs. So, yeah, it's been an adventure with the bullpen, but as a whole, Astros simply convert with runners in scoring position. The Yankees don't. And I think the Astros should win this game somewhere in the realm of 6-2, 5-2. I don't know. I think Verlander's going to shut it down. So as a whole, lean to the Astros on that one. Moving on to college football, 4 games to talk about. Don't really have any strong opinions about any of them. You have Marshall versus Florida Atlantic. I actually will lean to Marshall here. Florida Atlantic opened up roughly 5.5, down to roughly 4.5, give or take. I think Florida Atlantic's decent, but their strength of schedule hasn't been that great. Marshall, I think, has a solid defense, and I think they should be able to limit Florida Atlantic and Lane Kiffin's offense at least to a little bit of a crawl. So I think that game will be close. I think Florida Atlantic could win, but I think it will be by a field goal. I think that is roughly too many points. I'll link to Syracuse here as an underdog against Pittsburgh. I know Syracuse looked terrible and Pittsburgh has looked pretty solid, but Pittsburgh on the road has definitely looked a lot worse than it has at home this season. And in the Carrier Dome on a Friday night, or not the Carrier Dome, just at Syracuse at home, I think you should see a solid performance by the Orange, and I think they will come out focused in this one. Lean to Syracuse on that one. Moving on, Ohio State versus Northwestern. I know that Northwestern looks tempting as a home conference underdog at roughly 4 touchdowns. I'm not touching it. If I'm playing, I'm laying. I have to take Ohio State. I think Fields is going to go off. Northwestern hasn't been able to move the ball under any consistency with this offense. I'll lean to Ohio State. I think they will win by roughly 35. And the last game with UNLV and Fresno State. Fresno State did screw us on the play of the day last week, but at the same point, I will lean to Fresno State minus the 14.5. I think they'll win pretty comfortably, particularly considering the fact that Fresno State is returning home and they are 0-1 in conference play. I think that they will come out focused and try to beat UNLV, and I think they will win by roughly 17 points. Now, in terms of hockey, I gave out some leans yesterday. We went 1-1 on the leans, as we gave out the Wild money line at plus 130 just for sheer value. They were terrible. And we also gave out the Buffalo Sabres on the money line as an underdog, and they ended up winning outright as Carter Hutton continues to be the best seeker in the NHL. He's 5-0, and he had a 47-save shutout yesterday as the Sabres won 3-0. Definitely a solid performance by him. Look to back him in the future if he is starting, as he has been probably the best goalie in the entire NHL at this point in the season, and nobody knows who he is. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. In terms of the games today, lean to the Blackhawks here at roughly minus 130. Columbus is expected to use their backup goalie, where Chicago will be using the backup goalie as well, but they will be using Robin Lehner, who was a starter for the Islanders last year. Pretty solid. And the Blue Jackets will be starting a goalie who has a goals against average of roughly 7. So for that reason, I will lean to the Blackhawks. I think based on the goalie matchup alone, I think the Blackhawks should be able to score a couple of goals. I think Kane will have a point or two, and I think the Blackhawks will win. Other than that, looking at the rest of the betting card, what else do I like here? I would lean to what do I like? I'll lean to Pittsburgh and the Stars over 5.5. Ben Bishop will not be in net. Dallas will be using their backup goalie. And Murray will be in net. He has had a solid record, but he did not look that sharp in his last 2 starts. And I think that you should see a decent amount of goals in this one. I think you should see 4-2, 4-3, somewhere along that realm. And I think you should see an empty netter opportunity to send this game over, worst case scenario. So lean to the over 5.5, which I think is just too low for this contest. So those are my 2 leans. And in terms of the UFC, some brief thoughts. You will have the continuation of the Yair Rodriguez and Jeremy Stevens fight, which got canceled after a no contest after roughly 14 seconds about a month ago. They will be resuming that fight. I will still lean to Yair Rodriguez as I leaned to him in the first fight. Stevens, I think he has knockout power, but I think Rodriguez is so unpredictable that I think he will catch Stevens off guard, maybe hit him with a couple kicks, and I think Rodriguez should win this by either decision or by knockout, so I will lean to Rodriguez there. In terms of the main event with Weidman and Dominic Reyes, I would lean to the over 1.5 there in terms of rounds. I think that you can even get 2.5. I think this fight could potentially go the distance. Reyes has some power, but Weidman is exclusively pretty much a wrestler, and I think that since he hasn't fought in a while, I think he will look to get this fight in his comfort zone, and I think it will turn into a little bit of a scrum on the ground, which should eat up some valuable time on the clock. In terms of the fight itself, I would lean to Reyes because Weidman has really not fought in a long period of time, but I think that Weidman style should lead to a longer fight, and I think that fight should go over. In terms of the other fights, though, Greg Hardy will be fighting Ben Sassoli, and I think Hardy's going to take his head off in roughly the first minute. I would look for Hardy to win in the first round, whatever price that may be. I think he's going to take his head off this fight. If you look at the records, it looks like it has been grooved to help boost Hardy's record. And I think Hardy will come out and pretty much dominate, and I think he will knock him out in the first minute and a half or so. So lean to Hardy by knockout in the first minute. If you can find that somewhere, lean to that. But the play of the day will be on Gary Sanchez and no hits, which is available at minus 115 on DraftKings, and that is the play of the day. Other than that, though, that's going to do for this installment of Scott Selections over Friday, October 18th. Good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.